Good morning, Opening Pathways viewers, or whatever time of day it is for you. This is Tom Lenoble, and it's great to be with you again. I'm so excited because I have Rachel Doyle with me today from GlamourGals Foundation. And one of my favorite things is to have nonprofit founders on the show. And today we have Rachel. Rachel, welcome to Opening Pathways.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
So excited to have you here. I know the viewers want to know, and I want to know all about Rachel Glamour Gals. I mean, what a name is that? And so tell us a little bit about Rachel and Glamour Gals, and then we're going to jump in.
Well, Glamour Gals started as a really personal journey for me. It was when I was a teenager, my grandmother had passed away in a senior home, and I wanted to do something that honored her. And I thought about the things that I loved, and I loved fashion and beauty and makeup. And I thought, why not take the things that I love and use them to make people smile? And when my grandmother passed away, it was after her passing that my father had really shared a little bit more about her career path and what she did, and it was actually all in the beauty industry. So it was kind of fun to understand a little bit more of what I loved is something that she loved, and a way to honor her was to kind of like do the things that she loved, which was providing beauty makeovers. She worked at Elizabeth Arden Red Door Salon in New York City and did all these celebrities hair and makeup. I have all these great photos of her standing at, like, her and the ladies standing outside the door frames of like the spa. Very simplified, nothing like what spas are today. But really, when she passed, I wanted to do something that honored her. And I think I've always been drawn to service. I was in every school club. I did every activity. I walked every walk, collected every can of food, begged my parents back in the day for a check, checks to get donated. But there was something transactional about all those things where I really loved meeting and connecting with people. And Glamour Gals was born out of the idea of sitting down, spending time with someone, holding their hand, and using beauty as an element and a tool for conversation, companionship, and connection. And in August of 1999, I went into my first senior home that maybe anecdotally I had played my violin during the holidays or something like that. And I pitched my idea of coming in with maybe a friend or two to provide complimentary beauty makeovers to the women residents living there, to kind of create this beauty parlor atmosphere. And I, of course, immediately was asked, who's your corporate sponsor? Who's the adult in charge? Where are you getting this? And I'm like, let me write these things down and get back to you. And I went out to my mom's minivan parked outside the senior home and said, "You're an adult. Will you help me be in charge?" And my corporate sponsor, I opened up the yellow pages and just started calling people about, will you donate makeup to this thing? And fast forward a couple months later, in January of 2000, myself and two friends that I dragged from homeroom saying, "Don't you need service hours to graduate? Don't you like beauty? Please." A kind question. "Will you come into the senior home?" And in January of 2000, the very first Glamour Gals makeover happened with myself and two volunteers, and it was covered by the New York Times. And ever since then, we haven't looked back.
Amazing.
And it's really grown now 25 years young into a movement of empowering young people to find themselves or develop their leadership skills through intergenerational service. And that's conversation, companionship, and our signature program of complimentary beauty makeovers given to seniors in care.
I cannot tell you how much I love this story that you're sharing today because we tend to overlook sometimes the care of our folks that are getting older and in that part of their lives and how much they need that. This means so much to me, and I want to know this. You started this path. I hear about this first time you did it But when was the moment you knew this is my path?
No, that's a wonderful question because I think after 25 years, I've had pivots or inflection points that looking back, I maybe didn't have a reckoning of like, this is what I need to do. Instead, it was, I've got to keep doing what I'm doing because it's important to someone other than myself. So I said that this was a journey that I started that was very personal. It was in honor of my grandmother. It was something I enjoyed. And then at my first makeover, I invited two other people into my journey. And I remember after the makeover, the two volunteers that I dragged into the senior home turned to me and said, "Hey, when are we coming back?" I hadn't thought about that at all. I was just trying to get through like the here and now. I remember standing outside that activities room, peeking in, being absolutely terrified at seeing there was like cameras there. Apparently the senior home had invited press and the local newspapers and all the adults just like who were like wanting to know what is this like you said, what's this Glamour Gals thing? It's sort of raised eyebrows. And I remember saying, well, I'm here to make other people feel dignified and appreciated. And I'm just going to walk through into that and walk into that room and just do that. I'm going to ignore everything else, kind of the almost like a performative aspect of people just like standing and watching us. And just, I think it was more of curiosity of like, who are these glamour gals? And just enjoy the moment with the seniors. And it's actually captured by the Metro stories in New York, not New York, well, New York One did do a piece later on, but the Metro Channel, and I filmed a documentary about that first makeover. And really, it was that first time when people turned to me and said, "Oh, I want to do this again." And then after that, people wanted to do it again and again. And then when we were on, uh, after that, the New York Times wrote a piece, and all of a sudden, Oprah called my high school. And then people were mailing packages to the main office of my high school. The secretaries were sort of like, Rachel, this is not a loading dock here, like we're the secretary for the school, not you, but. So, and it was, I think when I noticed that there's a demand outside of my personal story of people saying this is important to them. As far away as I remember getting about a year later after that, we were on the CBS early show and I got emails from as far from Australia. Somebody in Australia was like, my mom would have loved this, or my teenage daughter needs to be a part of this, or my son loves his grandmother and this would be great. Or I was raised by my grandmother. And all of a sudden, the story wasn't my own anymore. It was literally everyone else's story being realized through this very approachable, relatable programming of connecting people through the beauty makeover.
So wonderful. I mean, really, you're making me reflect on um, visiting my dad in assisted living. And I remember I would fly in from California and spend a week with him every month. And as people got to know me there, they would say things like to me, "You flew all the way from California?" And I said, "Yes." "And you come here every month?" I said, "Yes, of course, it's my dad." And we're from a little town in Florida. So, a lot of people knew who my family was anyway. And they said, "We have people that live down the street and we never see them." And I'm like, how could that be? What are they missing? And I remember making that like a personal thing of mine to start stopping and knowing who wasn't getting visited, right? To just say hello, that someone cares. I love what you're doing. I love this next question. I think I already know who you're going to tell me the answer is, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Um, we all have role models. We all have somebody that sparks something in us to do what we're doing today. I know I do. Who was yours?
Well, first, I want to recognize how incredible of a son you are for flying and doing that. I just want to recognize that caretaking or loving and being a part of an aging parent's, life in that way is really beautiful and it's special. And I don't know if he's still living or not, but I just want to say thank you for
Thank
doing
you.
that. It's really special. You're a very special person to do that. And
Thank you.
I'm so glad I'm talking to you
Yeah,
about this.
I'm actually, I could tell you many stories. We're not going to do that today, but someday I'll tell you more stories of my of what happens with me. Like I remember there's this woman that I used to go to this restaurant after church on Sunday, and I would see her, and she was clearly in her late 80s, and she would always sit at the same table. And I started buying her lunch, and but I would tell them not to tell her. I didn't want her to know. I just wanted to, it was something I wanted to do for her. And one day, this little Italian woman walks over to me with her cane and looks at me and she goes, I just want you to know I know you're buying me lunch and you could at least eat it with me. And I had this most incredibly beautiful relationship with this woman every Sunday throughout the end of her life, from when she ended up in the, in her assisted living and through her transition. And I'm only sharing this because I know you understand, but I'm sharing with our viewers to hear the stories that Rachel is sharing with us and what we're talking about, and the value of what you can get out of sharing yourself, your love, and your service with people that just would welcome it more than you can imagine, and how important it is. I promise you, and I know Rachel will say the same thing, it will bring you back far more than you ever give. Rachel, back to you. Was it your grandmother that sparked all this in you?
Um, yes, the program is inspired and in memory of my grandmother, but I would say my role model was actually and is actually my mom. You know, I I I started Glamour Gals in honor of my grandmother who had passed away. I didn't necessarily have the closest relationship, I think, because we didn't understand 25 years ago about Alzheimer's, dementia, and aging the way we do now. Her mind maybe wasn't as clear, and we didn't know how to define that, but she was physically healthy. I mean, she passed at 93, and she passed because she chose to stop eating. That is prevalent among older
It is.
individuals. And I think now we understand about isolation and loneliness and at all ages. And after COVID, we don't even have to stand in a soapbox like I did for 20 years. That was a huge shift. But where I derived, I think a lot of my inspiration was my mom was a kindergarten teacher and she still came home and cooked dinner every night for us. She sat and did her homework with us. So she may have not been able to write big checks to create organizations, but she always gave me the support and the idea or just the thought that I could do something if I just worked hard enough. And it wasn't even stated. It was just she gave me enough support that allowed me to think that if I just lock myself in my room, open up the yellow pages and start calling people, that something could come of that. Or if that if she drove me to the place and I got to meet with that person, then maybe something would come of that. And so she was the conduit in so many ways. And she even reflecting back, people always ask me about like, what were your parents like to create when you created this so young and you did that? And I always joke that like I've got this incredible photo video documentary of my life at Glamour Gals, but a lot of the time my parents were working and couldn't be a part of those moments. I threw the first pitch at Yankee Stadium. My mom couldn't be there. She's gonna hear this and not live it down again. But I was in a big photo shoot for a Cosmo magazine and she had to work, or like, so she maybe wasn't there at those like flashy points, but she was there when you need the role model, when you need the mentor, when you need like those quiet, challenging moments that there is no glitz and glamour. It's like, wait a minute, I need to get to the senior home. Can you drive me? They told me I need an adult in charge. Will you be that adult? Oh, I'm not old enough to incorporate as a nonprofit. I need board members. Will you be my first board member? Like she was just helpful. And to this day, I joke actually with both my parents because I should give some credit to my dad too. the two of them, as we say, they're the biggest mensches you'll ever meet because I think their way of living life is that they help people. It's just a lifestyle. It's just part of who we are. Someone is sick, you bring them soup. Someone needs help, you help them if it's across the street out of a taxi cab, or literally like sit down and help them figure it out. It's almost like a very practical way of living, but in a way it's a little spiritual too because they they didn't shout it from the rooftops. They just practiced it.
Just did it. Yes.
They just did it and I just did it with them over and over again and it just happened to be maybe a little bit more focused over the last 25 years through the framework of what I created with Glamour Gals. So it is my
Rachel,
model, my role model.
I just made this decision. You and I have to have a part two because there's so many parallels we have. Both my parents had this same kind of thing about how they operated and doing for others. And I know that's why my life today is dedicated to service and service to others, is because that is what, and we didn't have much. We really didn't have much. And that was a focal point. And then there's the whole idea that my dad also had Alzheimer's, dementia, and that process. And you and I have a lot to talk about. I can see that right now. So, I'm just so grateful you're here today. I want to ask you this though. What personal values have guided you along this journey?
I would say being compassionate, but I actually like to use the word almost like empowered empathy because compassionate can seem too weak, I think, in the framework. And I would go even so far as to say bold kindness. That's been a word uh, or words that I've been using lately because there is a power in being of service and practicing empathy because you might not have all the confidence that you think you need to get something done. But if you're able to move through a challenging situation where you are giving more to someone else in that moment, there is an incredible power in you and in them. And maybe in the moment, as a 16-year-old, as a 22-year-old, as now I'm not going to get into what age I am, but the you don't notice it when you're in the moment. And what's really beautiful at Glamour Gals is that we have a leadership model, a framework that allows the students who are practicing this, who are being guided by being a compassionate listener and an empathetic leader, they have the moments to journal and reflect on it. And that's where I think true transformation happens. It's the
Yes.
stopping and reflecting. Now, I'm not saying they're award-winning pieces of writing, but that's not the point. The point is to start pausing and reflecting on your experiences. And over time, those will produce something that is useful if it's the recognition of how they are transformed personally, academically, or professionally in their work. It might be their use of this reflection as a currency to them, such as, wow, I can string these together to make a scholarship essay for college and go to college and be the first one in my family to go to college, utilizing my service with Glamour Gals. So I think my guiding principle is bold kindness.
I love this. Rich, I have to share this with you. I just launched a book 3 weeks ago, and so it's on my mind of books and stuff. And I'm always hearing people talk, and I'm like, I've got this title for your book. Now, I don't know if you've written a book yet, but you're going to. I'm going to share with you, you will, because this experience that you've had, it is required that you share it with others. And you just named your book. Bold Kindness is the name of your book. So you might put a tagline on it, but bold kindness. And when you say that and where that it comes from within you, you just named it. And I hope you'll do that because the world needs to hear more from Rachel
I
Doyle,
appreciate that.
without a doubt. So tell me this. Um, you know, you look back to when you started all this and there were people in your life, and here you are today, and we're almost somehow at the end of 2025. Um, People that were watching you back then, What would surprise them most about you today?
Oh, I haven't changed. No. No, it's interesting because, uh, the world is a really small place, and with technology and being connected so often with people, so many of the people that I knew 20 plus years ago have come back. And for example, there's one of our consultants that we work for, like creative director, website. Like I went to high school and grade school with him. And I feel like I should ask Chris, like Chris, but or I think we've invited them back into the work. And what would surprise them? Maybe I'm not that controversial. Like maybe I haven't changed. I feel like oh, I think if I had to say what surprised myself is maybe the inherent confidence I have in the decisions I'm making now that I don't even notice, but it's with experience that allows you just that inherent confidence. And if I look back, some of the things that maybe held me back then to, for example, like I remember I was always afraid to run for like student office. I maybe didn't think I would win if I had to have the whole school voting on me, and I just didn't think that would be something that I could do. But I just through Glamour Gals, I've always felt more confident, and I don't know if it's just the way I've built the community around and the people we invite in that allows you to feel like you can take on more. But I don't know. I feel like I need to start asking people, like,
I
have I changed? Does it surprise
Part two,
you?
you'll have to tell me what you
I know you know what? There you go. We'll start part two with
start part two with
what
what
would
you
most surprise them, because I feel like people just keep coming up to me and saying, wow, I'm just so impressed that you've been doing this for 25 years. So maybe I'm not very surprising to people. I don't know. I have to check that out.
tell me this. I want to know about a risky decision you made that paid off and what gave you the courage to act.
Well, one immediately comes to mind that it maybe wasn't huge in the moment, but it was huge in that moment. Like it wasn't for the, so I had started creating, I recognized early on that, I was in college and I need to create almost like a board or council of advisors. So you have your board of directors in a nonprofit, that's your legal board, your legal entity. But I understood that I alone could not build something that would have great, tremendous impact. So I had to bring other more knowledgeable, skilled, experienced people into what has now created what I call the advisory council. And I remember I really wanted to have men involved in that. So I was actively having not just women, that's great. We're a women driven organization. We majority serve women because women outnumber men in senior care, even. Yes, and our signature color is hot pink. So not everybody is into that, which that's okay. But we wanted to know that everybody's welcome. So there was a, a man who joined our advisory council. And, when he first came on, he waxed poetic. It was just like he was all about it. And then it was the night before our first meeting, he called me up and pretty much told me off and said what a failure I had created. Yeah, yeah, I've had a couple crazy moments on this journey. And this was a moment where this person, listen, everybody's entitled to their opinions. I'm always up for constructive criticism. But he was kind of coming the night before a meeting where people were like flying in for this meeting, volunteering their time, volunteering their expertise, and he was gonna like ambush it. He was gonna ruin the moment, you know? And literally on this call with this person, like 30 years my senior, I just said to him after he was done going off, I accept your resignation. And I don't know where I got the balls to even say that to this person, but I thought about it and said, this person is going to hijack everybody's time. Even if there's an element of truth, maybe we could be more organized, maybe whatever it was, but there was a different way of going about it. And it would have ruined the culture of the meeting. It would have wasted people's time. He would have totally just hijacked a productive experience. And I, as a leader, needed to recognize that moment and make a very important decision that I think floored him because he just stopped and was not expecting me. Maybe he was expecting me to be like, oh, you're right. And how can I change? And whatever it was. And I would have none of that. And I said, you know, I accept your resignation. And he was so aghast. I think he was like, and I forget exactly how the call ended, but he did not come to the meeting. The meeting was great and we moved on. But it was moments like that where, that would have definitely changed the environment for it would have had ripple effects. So
Wow.
yeah, I felt very ballsy in the moment, but even now 20 years later, I think back to like there's these key decision making moments as a leader you just have to own. You have to
Yes.
trust your intuition, but it was also calculated. It was based on if he does this tomorrow, it will ruin tomorrow. So the action must be taken today. And what is that? And thinking on your toes.
Yeah, viewers, Rachel just gave us a master class in leadership. Um, yes, just right here and now. So, Rachel, tell me this. How do you decide when to pivot or push through?
You have excellent questions. I'm just letting you know, like these are really awesome questions. And I love being a part. So we're doing a part two, by the way. It's done. It's done. It's booked.
We are.
Um, I think as an entrepreneur, that's a really delicate balance because there are times where, you know what, like a perfect example of that in a practical sense is when you do events. Like events are times where the churn of work happens and you have to push through to the end and there's an event. There's at least a climax of some sort of like deliverable, which is great. You have to push through. Um, and what's the flip side was I want to use the right nomenclature. You said when to
Pivot.
push through, pivot.
Pivot.
When you know that you won't productively get to your next step. So pivots. I did the ultimate pivot in the organization. Um, I want to say March of 2020, but I'll go back one step further because I think everybody can talk about their COVID pivot, which I do want to touch upon that because I think there's a really incredible moment there. But even before then, it was in college. I was meeting with one of my advisors, Dr. Deborah Streeter. She was an incredible professor there. Look her up, follow her. I think she's retired. She's retired now, but she's just an incredible individual. And I remember sitting in her office because I did an independent study where I was reading all the nonprofit books. And I was feeling really guilty because I was spending all this time building the organization and thinking about the framework to scale and planning and doing all these things. And I wasn't going to the local makeovers that were being done, for the program. And I was feeling really guilty, sort of like a little bit of a fraud. I was like, I went into her office. I said, I feel like a fraud. She's like, Rachel, take a beat. Notice you, this is a moment of transition for you where you are not just the volunteer, you are the leader. And by you doing this work, not just two volunteers going into a senior home, there can be hundreds or even thousands doing your work. And somebody's got to do this work to get to that point. And I went, oh, yeah, you're right. And I felt I could be okay in that pivot, in that work, in that shift from going volunteer to leader. And I always love talking about that because our volunteers do that in their chapters. One day they're best friends, peers, and the next day they're the chapter president saying, you need to come to this meeting. You need to follow my schedule. They're like leading their peers, which is like the hardest thing to do in any sense of the word. Now, the COVID pivot, looking back, was extraordinary because what would have shut down our organization? Senior homes were 100% closed down. The only way to reach people were seniors was to literally slip something underneath a door frame. Remember that. It still gives me chills thinking about it. Schools were shut down. Now, we recognized something was happening even before the USA shut down. We actually paused our programming and immediately reached out to our stakeholders and said, and those are the teens, the seniors, the teachers, the senior homes, our community of donors, everybody who's got somebody in a senior home, senior assisted living, the parents, and said, how are you what's happening and how can we move forward together. And within 7 days of pressing pause, saying, we can't go into senior homes right now. What are we going to do? We did a whole host of programming that's great for a cocktail conversation, because giving 32 iPads to seniors in different rooms with and having 32 kids on Zoom, not sustainable. But what we did create was our My Dear Friend campaign. And that was, we didn't want any senior to feel left out. So you may have had your favorite Ethel, or who's the woman you had lunch with?
Noreen.
Noreen. Maybe Noreen's the talkative one, but not everybody's a Noreen. So we wanted to make sure that in our programming that every senior felt seen. And by addressing every card that we would write, my dear friend, they could be given the activities director, who was now the personal assistant trying to connect families or the outside world with possibly 32 residents or 750. And if you know activities directors' jobs, they're part-time, underpaid, huge turnover. So we had to make it really turnkey, that these cards would be sent to our homes and now future homes that could be future GlamourGals chapter locations, and they could be slipped underneath the door frames, and they could be held tangibly in the hands of seniors. They could be placed in the walker bag. They could be placed on the bedside table. They could be put on the cork board. They could be put in the drawer next to someone's bed near their valuables. They were tangible recognition that the outside community is thinking of them. And what started as just what we thought was a bridge or a Band-Aid program has now launched into a global program that has reached over 250,000 isolated seniors in care. We have engaged Fortune 500 companies to the local waitresses at somebody's restaurant, a staff of 5, to do these incredible interactive community building, culture redefining card writing events for Glamour Gals to reach seniors. And actually, this holiday season, our goal is to reach 100,000 isolated seniors in care. So we need all the card writers. You can do it from anywhere and anyone, even people's dogs, putting their paws on the paper. It was cute. And writing a kind message and getting it into the hands of seniors. And there is that intention of the Glamour Gals program, because remember when I talked about the beauty makeover, it's all about put your phone down, look someone in the eyes, and say, "Hi, my name is Rachel. What color would you like your nails painted?" There's no backspace in that, just like when you're putting pen to paper, marker to paper, paintbrush to paper, and you're writing a message. You have to you have to pause and think about what you're doing and write that message.
Love
So that
this.
was it wasn't a pivot, it was actually an innovation of our
You know
program.
what you're speaking to, Rachel, that I love is so many times when we refer to COVID, we talk about everything from the horrors to the difficulties to the inconvenience. And I believe there were many gifts that came from COVID. The fact that you and I are doing this today is one of those gifts. The fact that in the academy that I'm the CEO of, that we can now reach people anywhere they are to be trained as coaches, not just people that come to us. And it doesn't at all take away from our need that I think is growing all the time of being more face to face and being present with each other. But you've just articulated beautifully one of these gifts from something that none of us would have chosen to have happen. But here we are in the middle of it. And what do we do with it? And you get my applause. What a beautiful thing that you took and made happen during that, and then expanded on it and turned into something even greater. Congratulations on that. So I'm curious, have you ever said no to growth because it wasn't aligned?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, when they see something, they want to be a part of it and they start sharing, well, what about? And I'm like, oh, I know what's going to follow. The what about statement is like, well, what about people in hospitals? What about cancer victims? Or and there are plenty of organizations doing incredible work with those demographics. But for us, we really focus on the senior population. And just a little tidbit here, America is going to be the oldest it's ever been in the history of the country. Like the population graph, if you looked at one of those old textbooks, good old fashioned encyclopedia, it would have like looked like this. The population graph is that the first time in American history, it's that. So there is plenty to serve there, and it's staying focused on your mission. And mission creep is a real thing. Sometimes you do that because it's a little easier and it's a little more fun to try something shiny and new. And you can innovate like we did during COVID. You can innovate your programming, but it was based in the demand to serve the people that we who rely on us, teens, seniors, and even the broader community, because we were able to open that door. But it's really important to stay focused. Even right now, there is a tremendous push for us, like from the outside, to grow. And I am internally trying to literally hold back this almost like a runaway train, because I know the next stage of growth that we want to embark on. I wrote a 5-year vision plan for us to realize that realistically, certain things have to happen now, and I have to just like stick to them. And it's not perfect. And sometimes, like you said, you got to push through those moments and it feels quick. But I've always thought about Glamour Gals operating with the brains of a business, but the heart of our program. And it has to be efficient, it has to be effective, and in the moment it can feel very quick and almost a little impromptu. But then I know as a leader when to say, okay, great, this was when we had to work fast, but now let's pull it back and create that timeline. So some people will even say to me, like, wow, the pace seems, and it's intentionally set that way in that moment, because I know from my experience, you have to push through. The work needs to get done. But I have enough experience to trust that I say, you have to come as the leader, you got to trust me in this moment. I promise we're going to pull back and do X, so
Love this.
I've definitely been told my pace is quick, but I'm also like, life can be, let everyone else be mediocre. Let me get there first. That's
I
fine.
think your pace may be quick, but it is based in a very, very clear direction, a very clear mission, and very clear outcomes. And what you're sharing today in a nonprofit setting is so transferable to for profit. And those that are watching that are leaders, I hope that you're catching this. And in part 2, we're going to go deeper into leadership, because I just made a decision before we get off today, or when we get off today, you and I are scheduling part 2. If I have to come find you, we're scheduling part 2. So yeah, I have another question for you. Loving this. I'm not even going to get to the ones I really want to ask today, but we will. I've heard about the impacts you've made here publicly. What impact are you most proud of personally?
Now, this is going to be the hardest question, because after 25 years, there have been so many special moments in different ways for different groups and different people. Sort of like bring me to a restaurant and a menu. I'm like, just give me tapas. I never want to make a choice. Like with this question, it's the tapas question. I want to say like 5 different things, because I I love when I can make someone's life better. And I've seen that in so many different ways with Glamour Gals. It's like this onion that you keep peeling the layers, and inside, it just gets more pungent in the best possible way, because it's going to make like, you're going to mix it up and you're going to make some amazing dish with it, or just bite into it because it's Vidalia. But like, for example, this past weekend, we had like our 24th annual leadership training where we gathered 160 teens, and in New York City, many from backgrounds that would have zero access to an event that had former U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, the executive director of Kevin Bacon's 6degrees.org, Stacey Houston, and all these others, just incredible professionals that were there who were leading workshops, speaking, and it was just beautiful. And at the end of the day, one of our workshops that I love is that we do handwritten thank you notes. And I happened to come into the office and notice one of the manila envelopes had my name on it. And I picked up and I was like, oh my God, well, maybe this isn't mine. It was like this thick. And I went, these are all thank you notes from teens, most of which, like, I don't know who they are. I never had met them, maybe even personally. At the event, I tried to go around, and actually on my Instagram, I published one of the thank you notes because the girl came up to me personally and wanted to personally hand it to me. And so Ami is her thank you note is on there. But I posted it with the phrase, I do what I do, how I do because of this. And for all the volunteers that I have met, I'm going to meet, or that I will never meet, I have just so much gratitude for you being a part of this organization and having this journey with us and having your own Glamour Gals experience and being able to claim it as your own experience that will take you and move you into the next stage of your life, being a more informed person, if that's a better friend, a better student, a successful professional in or outside of the home, then that's what I'm most proud of. And I'll never know all those stories because I don't think that's realistic. But the thought that that's out there to me seems pretty profound. And I would say that's
This.
what's most special.
So tell me this, Rachel. Throughout this experience, especially the early days, what have you learned most about trust?
Well, trust is the basis for how you build a team that can help bring your vision or your ideas to life, because otherwise they're just ideas on a piece of paper and those are dime a dozen. Everybody can have cool ideas. Everybody can write them in their journal, but it's when you are able to invite others in to your vision. And for many years, it was people who I didn't pay. It was all volunteers, both adults and people in the community, and trusting them that when I'm not in the room, uh, they are executing my vision with the same excitement and passion, structure, and values. That's a huge amount of trust. And you don't get it right every time. And that is what life is all about, is learning experiences. And you can either take those experiences and they could crush you. And in the moment, you can take a moment and feel like they're crushing you. Or you can say, where's the truth in this situation? And how can I move forward productively? If it's like take a walk around the block, have a good laugh, or just get to work. A lot of times I just dive into the work to get through there. So hope I answered the question.
You did. You did.
What was the question again?
No, what's going to happen is we're going to schedule a part two because usually I delve a lot deeper into leadership and your organization than we've done today. And we're going to focus some in the second part on that if you're willing, because I think you have lots to share. And again, this has become a bit of a master class for people. And I have some pretty impressive people on this show, Rachel. And this is really cool. So I want to ask you this. What shifts are happening in our culture today that light you up? What are you excited about that's going on in culture today?
I think if you give young people the opportunity to do some of the old school stuff we did, like have the space to use a pen and paper and write down their thoughts and take the time to do that, have the space to to do kind acts. And I'm talking about it in this framework of providing opportunities for young people to then do these things. And to me that, and because when I personally do that, or we do that as an organization, it's met with excitement and passion and transformation in young people. And I love that that still exists, that we can slice out that part of humanity that still believes in true community building. It is hard work. It is really hard work. Every grant I write, and then when you talk to the foundations, they're like, why do you need to employ people? Because we are a people program, people first. Like, we can't do what we do, how we do without people. And I am a firm believer in leaning in and being terrified by AI and technology, but leaning into it to make our work more efficient so we can get to the people quicker, so we can promote the people more, that we can gather the people efficiently. But at the end of the day, our product is community building, and how that transforms one another. So I would say that's
Love this.
my take on that.
What are you most hopeful about for our world today?
I think I'm going to have a much better sense after I read those thank you letters, because I'm going to take the words of our volunteers and live by them. And actually, one of my other staff person said, oh, I got some thank you letters, and I'm thinking of standing up at my Thanksgiving dinner. And I'd be like, I would like to go through a couple things. Let me read the thank you letters. I think I'm hopeful because I get to see firsthand, time and time again, people doing really wonderful things for other people. I'm really lucky that I'm in a line of work where I'm constantly bombarded by the goodness in the world, and that you have to take that in and just ride that wave. And people say I bring a certain level of energy to certain rooms, and it's just at the end of that long day last Saturday, the lady who was working the desk at the venue we get donated like for the last 6 to 10 years, she's like, Rachel, I just have to point out, it was like 4 o'clock on a Saturday and it's quiet, nobody was around. She was just like, I watched you all day and you bring the same intention and thoughtfulness or just time and appreciation to every single person that came up to you. And to me, it's just how I operate. And if I could be a role model for others, that maybe people will just take 10% of that into their own lives and just replicate it, I think that would be really wonderful.
Yeah. I have one more question for you for today because we're going to get off this podcast and schedule part two. Um, if your younger self were to watch this podcast, what would you say to her?
It's not silly to dream big. I think I think back to some of the moments. Well, one, podcast didn't even exist, so I think to look at it and be like, oh my God, what the heck is that? Like no social media, like all this, like online, like just, cell phones were like bricks that heated up when I was in high school. You got them from Price Club or something, and they only had like 10 minutes of charge on them. So the technology thing would just, I think, kind of blow all our minds. But that aside, I just remember in those quiet moments saying to myself, oh, I'm not going to tell anybody this is what I'm really thinking because it just sounds so silly. Like I thought about like, I really want to change the world. And so I would say I actually could have been more bold saying that out loud. That it took me 25 years of maybe validation or experience or track record or other people wanting to hear my story to feel confident enough to say that when I was younger, I thought I could really change the world. Like that was something I kept like inside of myself because I just thought it sounded so silly or like just like outlandish that like me, Rachel from Comac, New York, would change the world in any way. And I think I can say now that, if I had to say to my younger self, hey, yeah, you can.
Yes, yes. Viewers, listen in on that. Listen to what those small voices are telling you and follow them. I have the good fortune of working in my career with many, many different generations now with Gen Z, the Zoomers, and I'm always reassured that we're all going to be okay. When we're that young, like every one of us, we're labeled with lazy and the millennials were, they've all got tattoos and don't wear shoes. I mean, everybody gets these weird labels. I got them. Every generation has. The Zoomers are getting theirs. But behind that, we're people trying to find our way and trying to figure out what we're going to do. And you see this right here with Rachel today. So when you hear these words, if you've got some ideas that are swirling around in your mind for my young and seasoned viewers, don't let them go because anything is possible just as nothing is certain. Rachel Doyle, please tell us again about Glamour Gals, where we can find you. And I know I am inspired to write a check. So other people may be as well. So I would love for you to share how we find you in case we want to do that. So tell us that before we close out today, our part one.
Well, in at first, just a sense of gratitude for understanding that this work takes resources and you can't do it without resources. So glamourgals.org, GlamourGals as in Sam.org is our website. If you Google Glamour Gals, well, actually, we have a pretty good Google track record. At Glamour Gals on all the socials. We're on all the socials, even our YouTube. It's all Glamour Gals. And there is a way to donate on our website via credit card, Apple Pay, or you can send a good old-fashioned check to the address on the website. And we really appreciate any and all. We're a 501c3, so tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law. And, even more so, we are excited to, not just have people's resources, but if you want to take action, click get involved. And there's ways to personally write one My Dear Friend card or click through to companies and see how you can get your global company engaged in our very robust CSR program. And, even yourself, as we build out our 5-year vision plan, the ability to actually volunteer with us and help us in our leadership programming and our intergenerational programming anywhere in North America. So lots to come with Glamour Gals. We very much, I'll say thank you in advance for that donation and check. It is put to good use, and I see it every day with the very hard work of my team that's actually walking by. There's a little cutout window, and they're checking in, kind of like, we got to get to the next meeting, Rachel. So I know how hard they work. And like I said, we're a people organization, and I'm a proud employer of really hardworking people in this industry as well, not just our volunteer work, but the inner workings of an organization that I'm really proud to say of the team we built.
Rachel Doyle, thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to my viewers, this is Tom Lenoble, and I'll see you next time.